What is up, everybody? It is Josh back with another video, and it is finally time for me to start looking into some Darkwing Blast for you guys. We've been focusing on YCS Utrecht preparation recently, which is before Darkwing Blast comes out, but I've been getting a ton of questions. What do you think about that deck? What do you think about that card in Darkwing Blast? What happens after Darkwing Blast comes out? And this is why I decided to kind of give you guys an overview of what I think about this set, and we're gonna do a little bit of a top 10 cards, top 10 archetypes included in Darkwing Blast. Without further ado, let us hop right in, because there's quite a bit of stuff to talk about, because I do think the set is very exciting and very strong. First thing on the list is the new Blackwing Support. We're not going to be looking at just one card, but all the Blackwing cards in number 10 here. We're not going to go into too much detail on what every single card does. I'm going to show you the cards real quick, and if you want to understand what they do, you can pause the video and read the effect. Otherwise, this video is going to get blown out way out of proportion, because I've included a lot of cards in this that I think are interesting. But the new Blackwing Support basically has a lot of powerful plays revolving around the very old Black Feather Dragon, or Black Winged Dragon, whatever. The old, you guys know what I mean, the old card from Shining Darkness. It's not what it's all about. And they get some pretty powerful cards, especially they get a new version of Black Feather Whirlwind, of Black Whirlwind rather, that special summons even more cards and is searchable by, I think it's Shamal that searches it. The deck is actually quite the interesting combo deck. It didn't perform really well in the OCG at all, but that might be because it's super weak to Maxi. It is also very weak to Nibiru, so I don't think it can ever really reach a tier 0 kind of status, ever, in theory even. But I do think the deck has some neat combos going for it, some very strong one card combos, especially when paired, I think, with Shamoon the Poison Wind, which is a card that was previously released. I think the cards have potential. I think it's definitely going to be a deck you can enjoy on regional or local level for sure. I don't think it's going to turn into a YCS topping deck anytime soon, but I think it's worth noting that all of these cards are relatively low rarity for us in the TCG, so it might be a cool budget deck to pick up, and actually it looks quite fun to play, so I'm looking forward to just picking the cards up for very cheap and just playing around with it. So I think that's why it deserves to be a number 10 on the list, even though it's probably not going to be tier 1 or tier 0 material even going forward. Number 9 is the new Pendulum Support. We're getting 3 new Pendulum monsters modeled after the Drew Draco monsters. We get Ignis Phoenix, Majesty Pegasus, and Dynamite Powerload, which are all powerful level 4 Pendulum monsters and have very unique effects, where one of them can even add any field spell from your deck to your hand. It's the wind one. They all have powerful scale effects and solid monster effects, and I think that's why these cards are something to look out for. Ignis Phoenix obviously being a secret rare, although I think it's not going to be a super expensive one, because once again, in the TCG, we still don't have Electromite back, so I think the deck will struggle without it to be super viable. But these cards are for sure good and something to look out for if they ever unban Electromite in the TCG again, which I don't know if it will happen, but if it does, these cards are probably the best way to play Pendulum moving forward. And whatever that's worth, whether Pendulum is top tier or not, I don't think is going to be the case for now, but it still is probably the best way to play Pendulum moving forward. So if you're a Pendulum fan and just want to enjoy the deck, I think it is for sure good enough to pick up for smaller tournaments, and is looking like it's going to get a decent boost from these cards. I think they're solid. Number 8, I've included Spellbound. Now, this card is a world premiere card, and since this is not an entire archetype, we can quickly go over the effect. All face-up monsters your opponent currently controls cannot be tributed or used as material for a fusion, synchro, XYZ, or link summon until the end of this turn. When this card was first released, people were screaming oh, it's another version of D-Barrier, it's super broken, but I'm kind of inclined to say it's not that great. It's got some cool things going for it. First of all, it stops link summoning, which D-Barrier doesn't do, of course, because it was designed in a time before links existed, so that's neat. But it only affects the monsters that the opponent currently has. So if I want to say prevent my opponent from going into, I don't know, let's use a current example, go into Gigantic Sprite, as soon as they have 2 level 2s, I have to use this card, and if they manage to put more level 2s onto the field, they can still use these as materials. So it's not as oppressive as D-Barrier at all. Also compare it to D-Barrier when it comes to a card like Branded Fusion. When it comes to Tearlaments fusing from the graveyard, it doesn't do anything against those. So I don't think it's nearly as oppressive as D-Barrier, so I don't think people are going to play this over D-Barrier anytime soon. It has some uses going second. It has some uses against specifically Flanderies as well, so it's not a bad card. That's why I'm including it here, but that's why it's also relatively low down the list. I don't think this is going to be a huge chase card moving forward. I think it might have its niches. I think there might be some formats where this card can be really good, especially when it has uses going first and second, because that's always nice when you can side deck a card that's good going first or second, or I mean, even main deck it at that point, right? If it's good at going first and second, why not main deck the card in a specific metagame for it? I think the card is solid. I don't see it being played right now, but I can definitely see it in the future. Number 7 is Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon, another TCG exclusive. They really did release some interesting TCG exclusives this time around. This card reads, change as many monsters on the field as possible to face down defense position. Then, if either player controls a face-up monster, they must send all face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. This card is specifically cool because it's an entire board wipe, and it outs every single Link monster, because Link monsters cannot be flipped face down, so those will be face up after this card tries to flip everything face down, and then they have to send those cards to the graveyard, both players. It also outs cards that are unaffected by card effects because it lets the player send the monster to the graveyard, which is different than directly sending the card to the graveyard with a card effect. So it does out some tower monsters. There is a niche in Yu-Gi-Oh! For sure for trap cards like this, especially in the side deck for going second, which sounds weird when we're talking about trap cards, but I think that is the most interesting use for this card, is a metagame where there's a deck that makes a specific board that is really weak to this card. Like a deck that just spams a lot of monsters that have like very strong interactions with the opponent but don't destroy or negate spell and trap cards. It could be a very good card to play against such a deck. Maybe hand traps aren't good at stopping the combo, or you can't really board break the field with your monster effect, so you can just side this card, or maybe even main deck it if the card's good in the meta, and just be like, yep, I'm just gonna set this, I'm gonna pass back over to you, and when you try to go for game, I'm just gonna use Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon to clear your entire board. The cool thing about this card, as opposed to a card like Torrential, right, is that you'll never be forced to activate this card in main phase 1 unless they have Spell Trap, Destruction, or Negation, right? Like let's say they make a big board and you set a Torrential Tribute, they might just have game on board and don't need to commit into it, or they commit like one summon into it and then they have 8,000 damage on the board, so you're forced to Torrential, and then they can still continue their main phase 1 and potentially still win the game. Both of these scenarios don't apply to this card. If they already have enough damage on the board and go battle phase, you can flip it in the battle phase. If they put more monsters onto the board to get to 8,000, you still don't have to do it in the main phase immediately. You can wait until the battle phase unless they force this card out, which is better than Torrential. The one downside to this card is it would seem like this card is specifically good against Link monsters, right? Because it flips them face down, can't flip them face down rather, and so they all get sent to the graveyard. However, it doesn't work if the opponent only has Link monsters, right? This card needs to have a monster on the field that can be flipped face down for it to be activated, otherwise it wouldn't be a legal activation as far as I know. So you either have to commit your own monster that can be flipped face down, or your opponent has to have some sort of effect monster, fusion monster, XYZ synchro for you to be able to activate this card. It's a small downside. Against Link only decks, this card is not going to work as well as you would maybe expect it to. Moving on, number 6, World Sea Dragon Zealantis. 1+ effect monsters. You can only control one World Sea Dragon Zealantis. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. During your main phase, you can banish all monsters on the field, then special summon as many monsters as possible that were banished by this effect to their owner's field face up or in face down defense position. During the battle phase, quick effect, you can destroy cards on the field up to the number of co-linked monsters on the field. When I first read this card, I was like, for a Link 4, this doesn't sound as powerful. But then I realized this card says 1+ effect monsters up here. 1+ effect monsters are the summoning conditions for this card, which means it's the first card of its nature that can be summoned by sending one singular Link 4 to the graveyard. And so it's incredibly easy to summon in any deck that goes for a Link 4, and in that context, I think the effects are actually quite powerful, because the way I see this card is not as an individual card, but rather as, you have to imagine it as if this effect, it's just an added option for every single rank Link 4 that we already have in the game. Like, let's say you play a combo deck and you go for a Yugioh to draw some cards and special summon a monster from your hand. Afterwards, you can also do this, right? Let's say you go for an Appaloosa and you've used one or two of your negates and it's very weak, maybe it doesn't even have attack left, and you can just turn it into this card after, right? Big Beat Stick 2500, turning like an 800 attack Appaloosa into this is quite nice. And I think in that context, if you think about it that way, I think it becomes just a very powerful card. I mean, we already play all these Link 4s without this added bonus option, right? And now we just have it. And like, what can you do with this, right? You just reset the entire field, right? You can flip problematic monsters that your opponent has face down. You can flip monsters back face face up that you have face down, right? If they book something with the card effect, you can bring it back face up. You can reset once per turn effects, which is huge, especially on some older cards that have like a summon effect that isn't once per turn. You look at stuff like Armageddonite, you can use it that way. And you can also rearrange link arrows for its second effect. So I think this card's very powerful. I don't know which deck plays it right now. That's the only thing stopping it from being like completely like busted, is that there's no deck that can really use it right now. At least not that I know. Like, I don't think Tier Elements or Sprite are going to use this card anytime soon. It is a secret rare, but I don't think it's going to be like a super chase card. I think you just want to have like one of this in case it ever gets relevant, which I think it will be. I think there's a good chance this will be relevant at some point. It's a very useful toolbox card, but since it's just a one-off in that case, like whenever you use it, you're not going to use more than one. It's not clear when you're going to need this. I don't think it's going to be a huge price point on a secret rare, but I think it's a good pickup to have just in case it becomes relevant. Next up on the list, Sprite Double Cross. Sprite Double Cross is a new Sprite Support card, which I think is needed for the pure Sprite archetype right now, because like they're kind of falling behind of the Tier Element archetype a little bit in terms of what they can do in a pure Sprite deck. But this card reads, target a monster on the field or in either graveyard, then activate one of these appropriate effects. Attach the targeted monster to one rank 2 monster you control. Place the targeted monster your opponent controls in your zone your link 2 monster points to and take control of it, or special summon the targeted monster from either grave to your zone your link 2 monster points to. This card is very unique because it can do a lot of things. It can attach opponent's monsters to your XYZs, which is very unique removal. It can steal your opponent's monsters into your link 2 monster zones, which is also quite nice. Or if your opponent doesn't have monsters you want to get rid of, you can use it as an extender and special summon monsters from either graveyard to a zone your link monster points to. This card is very, very cool. I think this is going to be a one-of in pure Sprite decks to search off of Sprite Jet and just be a very solid interrupt. Maybe you don't main deck this, maybe you just side it because it is a trap card, and like a card like Sprite Smashers already exists and is a good interruption. I would say this is a better interruption than Sprite Smashers, but of course it being a trap card means you can't use it as well when you go second. Like that's the thing that you can do with Sprite Smashers, use it going second to bait out stuff. You can't do it with this card. I think this is going to see play in pure Sprite decks, not really in other decks that just splash the sprites. I think Sprite Smashers is still more, you know, versatile in that regard, but overall I think a much needed boost to sprites, because I mean, totally awesome, not as easy to make anymore, so your boards are less resilient, and this card is a very welcome one-of inclusion I think in Sprite decks coming up. It's not going to be a chase card, it's just a super rare, but just so you know what it does, this is going to be added to the arsenal of sprites moving forward. In the 4th position we have 2 cards for Tier Elements. The new Tier Element support is here. There are more cards for Tier Elements in the set, but I don't think they are as relevant as these two, so in order to not talk about cards that I don't think are going to be super relevant, I'm only going to be talking about these 2 here for Tier Elements. Tier Element Scream is a continuous spell that if a monster is normal or special while you control the Tier Element or Visas, you mill 3 cards, which is the more irrelevant effect of the card, but the graveyard effect is you just add a Tier Element trap from your deck to your hand, which is something that previously didn't exist. You had like Saliak adding a monster, Madanoise adding something back from the graveyard, Crime adding from banished, Scream is the first one that adds a trap card, which is really nice, which makes it a really, really good mill as well, just because it helps you set up your Saliak or Madanoise every time. It's also a decent draw because if you can discard it for Rhino Hard, you can just search yourself the trap card. Also, if you draw this, you can activate it, normal summon a Tier Element, mill 3, see if you hit, and then you can either mill 3 on your opponent's turn again to trigger Tier Elements on their turn, or you can pop this card with your own Pearl Rhino to still get the trap card search. This card's very neat. It's been seeing a decent amount of play in the OCG, especially with Foolish Burial Goods, which just keeps getting a better card in Tier Elements, because now Foolish Burial Goods can turn into a monster search, it can turn into a trap search, it can turn into a field spell search if you play the Crystal Beast package. I think Scream is going to be a mainstay in Tier Element decks for a while. It's very solid. The way better support though is Tier Element Rule Kalos. Tier Element Rule Kalos is the new fusion monster that requires Kit Kalos and 1 Tier Element monster. It makes other Aqua monsters you control unable to be destroyed by battle, and when your opponent activates a card or effect that includes an effect that special summons a monster, you can negate the activation, and if you do destroy it, then send 1 Tier Element card from your hand or face up field to the graveyard, and then it has the same portion of the effect like Kaleido Heart. When this fusion summon card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon this card. Why is this card so good? It has multiple reasons. The first reason is this is finally a counter for Nibiru in Tier Elements. Nibiru was like a big deal for Tier Elements in this metagame, like it's one of the most used counters to combo Tier Elements. This card just puts a hard stop to it. Like this card puts a hard stop to Nibiru while also being an interruption on your opponent's turn. Very, very powerful. It's also a target for Branded in High Spirit, which means you don't have have to play D3S Frog anymore for that. You can just play that card in your Tearlament deck basically without a drawback, right? You don't need to sacrifice an extra deck slot for it because you're going to play this card anyways. This card is going to be a secret rare and a starlight, but as far as a secret rare goes, you're only going to need one in Tearlaments. They don't play more than one ever, I think. Kaleido Heart wasn't as expensive, and that's kind of in the same boat, so I think this card is going to be sought after, but it's not going to be a huge money card as far as the secret rares go. I do think it's going to be a little bit more expensive than Kaleido Heart is because the set is a little bit less value heavy. Like Darkwing Blast doesn't have as many chase secret rares as Power of the Elements did, so some of the secret rares I feel like are going to have to be a little bit more expensive than super like dirt cheap Kaleido Hearts or whatever. But yeah, you're only going to need one of this, so I think it's going to be fine. Lot number 3 of cards to look out for in Darkwing Blast, I put Sprite Sprint. I'm not putting this into the same category as Sprite Double Cross simply because Sprite Double Cross is support for pure Sprite. Sprite Sprint goes into a hell of a lot of decks. This card is very, very strong. Similar as Elf and Gigantic, it can go into a lot of decks. So it has the same summoning mechanic as Elf, which is 2 monsters including a level ranked Link 2, and it cannot be used as a Link material the turn it is Link summoned. Literally the same as Sprite Elf. You can only use one of the following effects of Sprite Sprint once per turn and only once that turn. If this card is Link summoned, you can send one level 2 monster from your deck to the graveyard, period. If another monster is special summoned while this card is on the field, except during the damage step, you can detach a material from an XYZ monster you control, target a monster on the field, and return it to the hand. On your first turn, you're going to use this card to Foolish. In pure Sprites, you're going to send Nimble Angler, which summons 2 Nimble Beavers, which makes this card essentially completely free in pure Sprites because it takes 2 monsters and then it summons 2 monsters, which is very nice because that means a deck that would previously put up 2 interruptions now puts up 3 because you get the Sprite Sprint it completely for free in a pure Sprite deck as long as you don't draw your Nimble Angler. You can either keep it around for the interaction, right, because it is like a bounce on the opponent's turn if you have an XYZ monster, which you should be able to do, or you can overlay it into Gigantic if you need to, if you're missing some other bodies for other things that you want to do. Very powerful card in pure Sprite. It's going to help it out a lot, making its boards a little bit more resilient with the added bounce, added interruption. Just free bodies is always good. But more importantly, or like maybe just as importantly, it's going to be used in a lot of other decks, mainly, you know, Tearlaments. Tearlaments can just Foolish a Merly with this, which is kind of crazy. Being able to get just a free Foolish Burial off of a Link 2 into your Merly, into a Fusion Summon, into maybe overlay for Gigantic, into some stuff, it's very, very good. The card is being used in almost any deck in the OCG right now, and it's not going to change for us. I think it's just a really powerful card, honestly. It is also going to be a secret rare. The light on the horizon is a little bit that this card is only a one-off in any deck that plays it. I haven't seen a single deck using 2 sprints, I think, in the OCG. Especially in pure Sprite, you sent the Angler turn 1, you're not going to have a second Angler plus targets in the deck for turn 2. You'd never need a second one. You can always reborn it with Elf if you want it again for the disruption. And I don't think like Tearlaments ever uses more than one. Once again, I don't think it's going to be a huge cash card, but just the fact that so many decks need it, it's still going to be a decent amount of money, I think. And you definitely don't want to miss Sprite Sprint. That card is like, even though it's in number 3, it's close for it being like the best card in the set. In number 2, we have 2 Bestials. Now, there are more than 2 Bestials in the set, but the ones that I really want to mention here are Bistro Magnum and Bestial Druisworm. Bestials in general have a couple of level 6 dragon type monsters that all work kind of the same way. The first portion of their effects is the same on the level 6 monsters, which is you target a light or a dark in the grave, banish it, and special summon the card from your hand. And this part of the effect is a quick effect if the opponent controls a monster. And then they all have some effect after they're being summoned, right? That's where they are different from each other. And Magnamut, which is by far the best one, is if this card is special summoned, you can activate this effect. During the end phase of this turn, add a dragon from your deck or graveyard to your hand, except Magnamut. You can only use each effect of Bestial Magnamut once per turn. So this card, you just summon it from your hand and it adds any dragon monster from your deck to your hand. Very powerful. Before we talk about why this is so good, let's quickly read the second one, which is the same first portion of the effect. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target a special summoned monster your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard. So against a deck that uses light or dark monsters, these cards are essentially better copies of DD Crow because they come with a free body, right? And not just that, they come with a free body with upside, right? Because Bestial Magnamut is on the field with 2500 attack and adds you another dragon from the deck to your hand, which even if you're not playing a dragon deck, you can just add Bestial Druisworm, and that's what's being done a lot in the OCG. A lot of people run 3 Magnamut and 1, 2, or 3 Druisworm, I think most commonly being 1. That when you draw Magnamut, you just like disrupt 1 Tearlament graveyard effect, because that's really, let's be clear, that's what this is really good against right now. It's really good against Tearlaments, and we're gonna live in a Tearlament meta for a while. So if they activate a Tearlament in the graveyard and they have a monster on the board, you just special summon Magnamut, prevent the Tear from resolving, and have a 2500 body for free. End phase, add a Druisworm from your deck to your hand, which is another free summon, another free interrupt, and also when this card gets sent from the field to the graveyard, you get to send a special summoned monster from your opponent's side of the field to the graveyard, which is also strong disruption, right? You can just summon these big bodies, link them off, send a special summon. It's like really, really strong when you go second, and I mean going first, it's still solid disruption on your opponent's turn. You can even use them as extenders on your own turn. You don't have to banish your opponent's cards, you can banish your own. The Bestial deck has like a couple of other cards that make it a solid deck on its own, which we're going to talk about when we get to some honorable mentions, but I think as like a second place in this ranking, I think it's only these two as a splashable engine in pretty much every deck. Pretty much every deck can splash the Bestials moving forward, and probably will as long as we're playing a Tearlament meta. Now, before we get into what I think is the absolute best card in Darkwing Blast in number 1, we're going to talk about some honorable mentions really, really quick, just because I want to get as many opinions as possible into this video on stuff you might be wondering what I think about it. Pure Bestials is definitely worth an honorable mention. There's another level 6 monster that just isn't as strong as the other two, which is why it's not included in the engine when you just splash it in other decks. And they have 2 big monsters, one of them being Bistro Magnum, which is a secret rare in the set, which is a very solid card. You can discard it to add any other Bestial monster from the deck to your hand, and it has some additional graveyard effects, and they have their own branded continuous spell and traps. They have the Bestial Albalos, which is also a powerful card. It's a floodgate that negates all Ritual Fusion, Synchro XYZs, and Links. Like the pure Bisted archetype or Bisted Dragon Link, I think is for sure an honorable mention. I think it's a good deck moving forward, but it doesn't really compare to what the Bisted engine is going to do, or Bestial as they're now called in the TCG. So that's an honorable mention from my side. Another one, Runics are already a solid engine as it is right now in the TCG, but they get another fusion monster that allows you to add Runic Quick Plays from the graveyard back to your hand, which is nothing crazy, but like it's a nice option for Runic decks, worth noting. Meteorologic Aggregator is a new Ultimate Slayer target. The first part of the effect, you can read it right here. It's not bad, but it's not like huge for a rank 9. It's kind of hard to summon. But the important part, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a face-up card on the field, negate its effects until the end of the turn. This is finally a very solid target for Ultimate Slayer as an XYZ, which we didn't really have before. Like we had like some options, but nothing too crazy for XYZ, so this makes Ultimate Slayer a little bit better. That's why it's worth mentioning, I think. Then we have Muckraker from the Underworld, which is the sneak promo as well as a secret rare in the set, which is a very good Link 2 monster for specifically, like it's for Fiend decks in general, but really mainly for Dark Worlds coming up. I think it's going to see play as a one-off in that deck. It's not a huge chase card, but if you want to play Dark Worlds in December, which I think is going to be a good archetype, we're going to revisit it once the structure deck is around the corner, but I think this card has its place in the deck as a one-off because it discards a card not for cost, which means it triggers all the Dark Worlds, which is quite good, and it reborns any Fiend from the graveyard, I think, at the cost of locking you into only Fiend monsters. But I think this card is going to be played in Dark Worlds, and so if you want to look for that, this card is a solid pickup. I don't think it's very expensive. The Turias are worth mentioning with Ishizus around the corner. They're all common, so you don't have to worry about them being expensive. This is going to be a solid deck once Ishizu comes out. It actually did have success in the OCG, which says a lot when we're talking about the Ishizu cards. I mean, if you don't know what the Ishizu cards are, don't worry. I'm going to cover them on the channel as well. The Naturia cards are going to be good when the Ishizu cards come out, just so you know. And then one last honorable mention before we move into the absolute best card of the set. I want to talk about Salamander Catalyzer real quick, which is another TCG world premiere card, new for us, hasn't been printed in the OCG. You can reveal this card and one Fiend monster in your hand, special summon one of them and discard the other. When a monster is destroyed by battle involving a Fiend monster while this card is in the graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. Both of the effects are once per turn. The way I see this card is it can be used in Dark Worlds once again in December. It has some synergy in other archetypes, but it's just a Fiend extender that discards a Fiend monster in resolution, which means it works with all the Dark Worlds. Like you can just reveal this, reveal any Dark World, discard the Dark World, special summon this, which is a level 4 Fiend, which is very useful. You get your graveyard effect of the Dark World, and then later on when you get into a grind game, you can add this card back from your graveyard even. I think this card is a solid Fiend extender moving forward. It's just an honorable mention that I thought was kind of cool, especially with Dark Worlds around the corner. Now, I mean, if you've looked at any Darkwing Blast content, you know which card is going to be in the number 1 slot, and that is Kashtira Fenrir. Kashtira is an entire archetype, but I'm only including this one card because this card is going to see play, mark my words, in every single deck pretty much, with only very few exceptions. It's commonly referred to as the new Pankratops, but let me tell you, this card is better than Pankratops, and I love it. This card is absolutely broken, but I love its design. If you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only use each of the following effects of Kashtira Fenrir once per turn. During your main phase, you can add one Kashtira monster from your deck to your hand. When this card declares an attack, or if your opponent activates a monster effect, except during the damage step, you can target one face-up card your opponent controls, banish it face down. This card is crazy. This card can be special summoned going first or second as first action if you control no monsters, which makes this card distinctively better than Pankratops because you can main deck this card finally. I've been asking for a card like this forever. If you followed some of my Floodgate discussions, like one of my opinions on Floodgates is I hate Floodgates, but I have kind of come to terms with the fact that they're always going to be around. It doesn't seem like they want to ban all of them. So I was asking them to at least make like a card that outs Floodgates that I can put in my main deck, right? Even when Spell and Trap removal isn't good in the game right now. And this is one of those cards. Of course, this card doesn't out every single Floodgate in the game. It doesn't out Skill Drain. It doesn't out Mystic Mine. But it outs a lot of stuff still. Like this card can out Gozen. There can be only one Rivalry. It can out a lot of things. And I think that's worth a lot already. It's main deckable in every single deck because it helps breaking boards. It's not only for back row removal. It's good for everything, right? It's a 2400 beater that when it attacks or when an attack is declared will banish a card. And then when you go first, you can use it as an extender or you can just leave it up on the field as an interruption, right? It's not the most powerful interruption, right? It's not like super unfair because it doesn't like negate anything. It doesn't stop anything. It just like banishes a card, which I think is fine. And then cherry on top, you can add any Kashtira monster from your deck to your hand, and it doesn't say except Fenrir. Fenrir can add Fenrir, which means the beauty of this is that we can play this card outside of its own archetype. We can just play 2 or 3 Fenrirs in the deck and just summon it and add another copy for later, or as a discard fodder or whatever. This card is very strong. I don't think I need to talk much more about how strong this card is. Good going first and second, outs problematic cards like Floodgates, helps you break boards going second, helps you run over things if you have trouble with that. Beautiful card. Creates card advantage. Very good card. Luckily, this card is only an ultra rare. If you asked me like a week ago or something, I would have bet that this is going to be a secret rare, but thank God they didn't make this a secret rare. It's still going to be, I think, relatively expensive because like I said, I think it can't be underestimated how many people will need this card because like literally almost any deck wants to play 2 or 3 of this card, I think. Speaking of which, also shout out to Konami for not making the Bistros a high rarity. I think these could have easily been higher rarity. They are just super rares, which I'm very happy about. I think this set is going to be a little bit easier on your wallet than it could have been if these cards were higher rarity. But yeah, that's it. Let me know in the comments down below if I missed any cards from Darkwing Blast that you want my opinion about. I will try to answer all of you with my opinion on whichever card I didn't include in this video. Hope this helped you prepare for the upcoming format. I'm sorry if it's a little bit long, but I think it's helpful when a new set comes out. There's just a lot of cards to talk about, so I couldn't really make it any shorter, I think. Hope this was helpful. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, check out the Twitch in the description below where I looked at these cards live on stream as well, and where we're going to be testing these cards starting next week, basically non-stop Darkwing Blast testing. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment down below, all the good stuff. Appreciate all of you watching the video. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.